Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Uh, Welcome to this LinkedIn Live session hosted by Everest Group. Though I'm equally excited about all of our LinkedIn Lives, this one is truly special. Uh, for those who know me, know that few years ago, in one of my previous roles within the firm, I was the lead locations analyst for Philippines and have some amazing memories both in the country and working with our clients as they think about Philippines strategy. The evolution, the growth, the acceleration of the market over the last 20 years has been phenomenal, and we are at a very pivotal moment where organizations globally are thinking about scaling their India Plus model. And as that happens, Philippines, both in terms of its position as one of the largest global services location, but also as the best alternative in the region, it has a big opportunity, and today we're going to talk about that from the GCC GIC perspective. I'm Rohit Ashu Agarwal, partner with Everest Group, lead our GCC GBS practice globally, based in London. So early morning for me, 6:30 a.m. here. But I could not be more excited about this. And I'm joined by a great panel that I'll request everybody to introduce themselves in a minute. But tell us, where are you joining in from? Where are you based? What's your interest in Philippines market? So use the chat to share your details and ask your questions. But once again, welcome to my fellow panelists. Really thankful for them for making time from their busy schedules. Let me go around the room in no particular order, but just the way I can see you on my screen, and will request a quick introductions before we dive into the discussion. Let me start with you, Paolo.
Sure. Hi. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Paolo Lao. I am the current chairman of the Global In-House Center Council of the Philippines, as well as the Dexcom country head for our Philippine operations. Happy to be here.
Great to have you, Paolo. Carol.
Sure. Good day, everyone. I am Caroline Claveria. I am the current head of Henkel GBS Plus Manila and also the country president for Henkel Philippines Incorporated. So I've been in the industry for about 20 years. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Carol. Nikki.
That's right. Good day, everyone. Name's Nikki Agkawili, country head for Carolyn Global Solutions Philippines, based out of Manila. Like Paulo, I sit in the board of IBPAP and currently also sitting as vice chairperson. Thanks again for having us.
Brilliant. And I think it's amazing to have a view of both the IBPAP and the GIC Council as well, to complement, of course, from your extensive experience at multiple global organizations. Thanks for that, Nikki. Anish. Anish, can't hear you.
Is it better?
Yes.
Okay, last minute tech issues. Hello everyone, my name is Anish Agarwal. I'm a vice president with the firm. I lead our research on the GIC or GCC market, and excited to be part of this special panel because again, Philippines is one of the major global services destination, which we certainly track, and that is why it's good to be on the panel here today.
Perfect. And I can see a lot of comments, people joining in. So great to see that. Please keep using the live chat to post your comments, ask for clarification, more details from our panel today. Let's get started, right? So, Paolo, let me start with you. Both you've been part of many GIC organizations in the Philippines, working to both serve and create a stronger global value proposition, and then you've been leading the GIC Council as the chairman. So tell me, how have you seen the Philippines global services market evolve over the last couple of decades? And in your view, what has been the defining moment as the market has matured, especially from the GIC perspective?
Sure. Yeah, no, it's we are just reflecting the other day with a couple of old colleagues. The GCC's GBS concept has actually been in the Philippines for many years. A lot of companies have been around as early as the 90s and some in the 80s in some kind of form or function, centralized to support multiple areas, right? And I think as over the years it started to evolve into scale. I think the one inflection point it started for us was a breakfast meeting between myself, Shell, Chevron, a couple of the other banks. We were just wanting to get together in a quiet and safe space to have a conversation about how different laws and regulations and legal entity structures. What was the best? How did we deal with certain things in a private environment, right? That where we could share and be transparent with each other in sharing of best practices. What is the art of the possible in the Philippines? I think the big inflection point was when that evolved and when we created the Global In-House Center Council in 2014 to 2016, somewhere around there, where we formalized it. And now we're at 110 companies and really created a platform for GCCs, GBS, GICs, whatever you want to call them, to collaborate and have that sharing of best practices, a common view on how we could elevate the entire segment as part of the industry moving forward, right? And then more and more as these companies grew and the value proposition of the Philippines shifted from not only the customer experience contact center space, but really truly recognizing the deep talent pool and the deep domain knowledge in verticals such as finance and accounting, HR shared services, supply chain, along with banking and financial services, insurance, and soon and recently over the past maybe 5 years or so, really big boom on the healthcare side as well, right? So that started to expand the kind of the landscape, and then multiple different value propositions, whether it was an India plus one for some companies, whether it was a Asia Pacific hub from a time zone perspective, and of course the ever-present North America support because of the 24-hour nature of the business. It just continued to grow and evolve. I'm very excited to see directionally how we're continuing to mature and move up the value chain in the maturity model.
Absolutely. And then, Paulo, one thing just to clarify, when you mention 110 companies, you're talking about the participation in the GIC Council. Am I
Yep.
right in stating that the actual GIC landscape in the Philippines is much larger, probably
Mhm.
almost twice the number of companies? Of course, you
It's
may have
about
most of the larger ones in the council. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about 200, right? And I think that we're adding more and more of the small to medium enterprises coming in. I think one of the challenges that we have with some of the other companies is that they'll be involved and then the country leader leaves and the connection or the awareness. And so this is really where events such as this one truly build the awareness to other companies about this opportunity to connect with similar structured companies who are internal to the larger organization, who are not third parties, and having a safe space to discuss. And so we've seen just alone this year, almost 10 new companies come join us, and we're continuing to grow leaps and bounds from a membership perspective.
No, absolutely. I think community interaction is very important as industry evolves. Building on your point around how you have seen the shift from customer, experience, customer services to add additional areas of work, and you mentioned many of them across, some of the corporate functions, operations, including supply chain, some of the digital and tech are going deeper into areas like healthcare and others. So, Carol, let me ask you, as you have been in this industry for about 2 decades, as you mentioned, what have you seen as key defining movements that have shifted the focus and kind of propelled the market forward? What is working for the Philippines GIC market, and what's the big opportunity here?
I think, I mean, I can speak more for Henkel and how I see it, although I can see it also like having an outside view as well. But basically, it's also the evolving skills and talent of the Filipinos in general. I think when we were discussing about it the last time, I think Paolo, you mentioned about creative, and Henkel, it's a big topic. Creativity is one major player, in one of the areas of marketing and sales where we're trying to insource activities because we have a lot of creative people here in the Philippines. What is only probably we just need to probably push on the war on talents because we basically majority of the creative people are really wanted it to go into gaming industry, etc., and less on more like GICC or shared service center concept. However, as we now introduce also, for example, the use of AI, the use of digital, it's getting more traction in terms of joining this kind of activities. And now we're getting known of, having talent with more creativity and more on the aspect of digital. So
Got it.
somehow,
Thanks, Carol.
yeah, if I may just add, I also saw like moving from very transactional activities, outsourcing it, and then starting to really gain more value adding activities such as digitalization, analytics, etc.
Got it. Thanks for the ad. And absolutely, I think as the industry evolves, some of those capabilities are becoming increasingly important. And some of these also are, from what I hear, are not the capabilities that are being lifted and shifted necessarily. Some of these are being organically built in the global construct, and offering capabilities to do that for global companies is a huge win-win. Nikki, coming to you, and again, Carelon itself has grown exponentially over the last few years, but generally the market has seen some ups and downs in the last few years. But here we are, a very strong foundation and strong momentum. uh, in your view, how do global companies look at the capability, the complexity, the contribution of the Philippines GIC industry, and what's the real proposition there, in addition to what Paulo and Carol have shared?
That's right. I think it's interesting. Rightly pointed out by Paolo. It's different industries, and I think one of which healthcare is one that's, to your point, Roy, has exponentially grown. And the value proposition, while it continues to evolve, still continues to be, deep domain expertise. How we're viewed is just because of the sheer number of clinicians, healthcare talent that's available in the Philippines. That's one of them. Um, affinity to process innovation. Well, there's a lot more that we can do on the tech side, process wise, and continuously innovating continues to be another factor
Mhm.
as part of that. And I think more than anything, and Paulo can attest to this, what we're seeing is we're not just, while cost effectiveness and English proficiency, Rohit, will always be fundamental, will continue to remain fundamental as part of decision making. More and more, what we're observing is the fact that we're now part or integral part of the strategy of parent companies, or part of the strategy, the overall strategy. Couple of things impacting that, of course, talent. Ease and cost of doing business, of course, will always be second, if not top, of the decision-making process. But more than anything, Rohit, what we're seeing that's shifting, and part of the evolution, is the fact that we're no longer just viewed as, um, you know, uh, we're already viewed as an extension. And it's no longer just about labor arbitrage. It's no longer just about English proficiencies, but it's part of the strategy, overall strategy of these companies.
Got it. And Nikki, as you rightly said, it's no longer about cost and English language skills.
Yeah,
It is about all the other factors, and I want to come back and talk about those other factors in more detail. However, just spending a minute on the foundational aspects of cost arbitrage, English language, and ease of doing business. Between you and Paolo, representatives also of your organization, but also of IBPAP and GIC Council, could you add a little bit more about how you see cost still playing a key role, a foundational role, right? Because I think while other factors are becoming more and more important,
sure.
everybody still wants to be cost competitive. So, one.
Absolutely.
Second, the ease of doing business. If you could just share a little bit more, because not everybody who's listening in today may already be in the Philippines, so they may not be aware about what that exactly means. And again,
Sure.
in all fairness, every country wants to claim that there is ease of doing business, but if you could just articulate it a bit more,
It's
how easy it is to do, to come build, operate, scale GICs in Philippines. So back to both of you, if you could just add a little bit more flavor to these points before we move on to those additional value levers.
Sure. Paolo, do you want to take a stab at it? I can go ahead. Just from an IBPAP, an industry perspective, Roy, it continues to be a work in progress. There's been, sitting the board of the industry association. One thing's for sure, I think more and more, and there's a project that we're currently working with the government with as far as upskilling and reskilling. Setting up shop, if you compare it to 10, 15 years ago, a lot has changed. And the reason I say it's work in progress, due to technology shifts, a lot of the processing, for example, used to be very manual. While there was an attempt, or there was at least a one-stop shop approach. And you're right. Every country will claim ease and cost of doing business is one of the selling factors or one of the value propositions. It continues to evolve, at least from a Philippine standpoint, that it's not perfect. A lot of what needs to be done can be automated. As an example, we continue to work with local government units as an example, and continue to help influence on a policy shaping front. Because at the end of the day, to your point, cost effectiveness still remains to be fundamental. There will be companies that will pay for premium, but cost effectiveness, of course, will be at the top of the list, especially with the rise of technology. And setting up shop in the Philippines, due to industry associations like the GICCs and the IBPAPs of the world, is something that we are able to help expedite. But to be fair, it continues to be a work in progress.
Maybe if I can jump on to that from what Tiki said, I think one of the key differentiators is IBPAP, right? And shout out Jack Madrid, who is the head of IBPAP, and Celeste Ilagan. The ability, or because they have access to the top layers of the government, our LegCom, as well as Celeste, who's our chief regulatory officer for IBPAP, has regular interactions with legislators, with policymakers, so that we are able to influence and shape, for example, the reason create more, the implementing rules and regulations. IBPAP was directly part of that to help the industry, to kind of clear some of those barriers to help the industry succeed. As Nikki mentioned, it's never going to be perfect, but I think having that proactive stance, that in years past we were more reactive, more like kind of thankful that we were part of the dance. But I think now with the IBPAP leadership, we're really being more proactive in how we can partner, how we can push the conversation with the cabinet level ministers that we deal with on a regular basis. And coming back to the cost arbitrage piece, I think more and more now you're seeing the Philippines compete from a talent perspective, right? I think that in my organization, the way I drive it is that, this level of resource is the same anywhere in the world, and they can be hired anywhere in the world. If the same person from the Philippines applied for a job in San Diego or our London offices, they would be hired based on their capability. And the labor arbitrage, or the cost component, is just the additional bonus at the tail end. So it's focusing on the value creation and value addition of the organization. And the bonus is that, we're still pretty competitive globally across the board from a labor arbitrage perspective.
Brilliant. I like the way you put it, and also how this kind of input reflects a comparison with Philippines 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So even though it's competing on the global stage, there is also a relentless focus on improving. Comparing it against your own baseline. I love that bit. Anish, before we move on, taking your inputs in, as you work with a lot of global companies and they're thinking about their global portfolios, sometimes adding Philippines, or sometimes thinking about Philippines as the primary location. uh, what else, if anything, stands out in taking people to the Philippines or something they desire Philippines should have?
So Rohit, when we do some of this location piece with our clients, right? One of the main things which come up with a lot of clients is one, certainly talent. It's a talent-driven market. I mean, there are very few locations which can provide talent at such a large scale, and Philippines is one of them. That certainly turns out to be an advantage. I mean, just to give some numbers from our research, and we work with IUF on the roadmap as well. There's already, I mean, by 2028, 1.1 new million jobs will get added, take the total talent base pool to 2.5 million, right? Which is a significant global services talent pool which is available in a location like Philippines. Now, that is certainly a base. Over that, as the leaders mentioned here, there's a lot of work to be done in order to develop the right skills which are applicable based on the way the industry dynamics are changing. But certainly the base is there for companies to come and work on, right? That's one. The second main advantage which I feel is the cultural integration, right? When we talk about, specifically when we talk about GICs, there has to be a integration with the enterprise, a close integration, a business mandate, a working relationship with your business leaders. And I believe Philippines already has an advantage in terms of the cultural integration which it has with some of the main source geographies like US and Europe as well. And that is where it's a natural choice, one of the natural choice at least, when it comes to location strategy for many enterprises.
Got it. Thanks, Anish. Very helpful. And I can see questions coming in from our attendees. Thanks to Hazel, Prasanna, a few others for sharing their questions. We will loop them in into the conversation as we go along. So stay tuned. Coming to you, Carol. Throughout the last 15 minutes, some of the areas such as digital tech, supply chain, more judgment intensive work, some of these areas have been mentioned. But if I may ask you again, uh, what are the new talents capabilities that you see Philippines offering, and then companies already employing people in some of these areas, which are often less known or underappreciated, but they really, underscore what we have been talking about in terms of the expanding value proposition of the industry. So people know what are the traditional skills and capabilities they can tap into from a Philippines perspective. What are some of the new areas, again, both in Henkel context, but also more broadly in your observation in the industry? What do you see people not thinking about when they think of Philippines? But that's wrong, because those skills are available and already getting deployed in some companies.
Okay. Actually, I'm about to comment on what Anish mentioned about a
Mhm.
wide cultural perspective. Although we have a good talent, etc., we have to really make sure that we sell them clearly. Speaking for Henkel, we are like European, German companies. We also have to adjust on the culture. Our service industry as a Filipino is very much of an advantage, but sometimes it works to our disadvantage also of trying to say yes to most of the things that our business partner wants us to do. But our business, particularly in Henkel, being a European company, tells us that okay, you can say no if you think it's off your scope. You can say no if you think if it's off your time. And it's an area of cultural adjustment and learning and upscaling that we're trying to work on in Henkel. And I think I speak with some of the GICC company also, and I think it's also the same challenge that they are experiencing. But more than that, I think what is underappreciated is the skills on market intelligence, data science that we have here in the Philippines. We just need to market them more to be able to ensure that, tell them that this is existing and we can just, leverage there. On the side of Henkel, we have, I think, few, like 5 people, I think that we're starting up with market intelligence. We're pretty much getting good feedback as to how they are working. So I think this is more of a, I would say, potential for further expansion further in the Philippines.
Got
And
it.
Rohit, maybe if I can jump on that as well, just because it's a wide variety of different pockets of talent that we're able to find, right? So technology, for example, is something that the challenge is the Philippines. There are preconceived notions of the Philippines, for better or for worse, on the customer experience side of it, and that because we are so strong in that customer experience contact center space, a lot of times
Yeah, we'll follow up on that with Paulo. Nikki,
Yeah,
if
Rohit,
you can jump
I
in on
think I'll
that.
just add on to what Paolo was mentioning. Just on the tech side, it's great that there's also, while not yet at scale, not everyone would realize that. Now, Paolo, I just took on your point on the tech side, which is great because Paolo and I are pretty much connected. But on the tech side, not everyone's also familiar that we do have a healthy pool of software engineers that do revenue cycle management, as an example. One profile that's highly needed at this stage, that's also available in the Philippines, are cybersecurity specialists. With the rise of
Mhm.
cybersecurity threats, so a lot of these out of the norm or out of your typical contact center agent roles are already available in the Philippines. In fact, right, one of the things that we've been discussing, at least from an industry perspective, is how do we elevate that? While it's great that the Philippines has been known for its English proficiency, literacy rate, being the contact center hub of the Philippines, what we need to be talking about and elevating more is the fact that there are other highly complex, highly specialized functions that are already available in the Philippines. Paolo, you might want to add to it.
Thanks, Nikki. Yeah, I think just to give some examples, right? Because we have so much customer data, because of the customer interactions that we have, the analytics component has come in, and the technology component has come in. So there are GCCs who have set up a tech op collaboration. How do they get the data using analytics to analyze customer sentiments and to help improve how they use their technology? So you're starting to see more and more linkages, especially where how do you look at the customer interaction component of it and then take it back to influence other sides of the business? Because most of us have multiple lines of business or multiple functions all co-located in the same, sometimes the same building, sometimes the same floor. It has a lot more of that, petri dish kind of like, let's germinate ideas of how can we be better. And as we build that stronger relationship with a larger enterprise, we're able to give more examples or more use cases where we can focus on larger scale. So those are just some of the natural progression that are happening that we're seeing. And as more and more companies expand, move away from just a verticalized finance and accounting model to adopt other pieces of the professional services component, which we have a significant talent pool in, you're starting to see exponential value creation from these types of activities to our larger organizations.
Got it. No, that's really helpful. Thanks, Paulo. Thanks, Nikki. Paulo, let me ask you a follow up question on that. Uh, it is on everybody's mind, and we are seeing a lot of technology shifts. In fact, just yesterday we hosted a large number of our clients for a breakfast briefing on how AI is going to disrupt the global services industry. We're trying to unpack it from a 2030 perspective, though none of our crystal balls is very efficient. So we'll see how that goes. But the reality is that there is a lot of cynicism and nervousness around the impact of AI automation and digital operations. If history has taught us anything, is that technology has always ended up creating more opportunities and replacing whatever exists with something of greater value, more knowledge intensive. At the same time, the speed at which AI can now complement the knowledge capabilities, I think that is something which is different about the shift this time. So from a Philippines GIC market perspective, how do you see the impact of this, and how's the industry preparing for this, trying to use that as an opportunity rather than as a disruption that they're kind of in the way of? So how do you address some of those questions? And then a lot of people kind of ask those questions with regards to the future of offshoring in general. So this is not a Philippines specific
Mhm.
trend, but how do you look at it and the readiness of Philippines?
So I think and I just was at the NASCOM GCC conclave a couple of weeks back, and then listening to the conversations, are very similar conversations, especially with large enterprise. I mean, you're very familiar of why it's taking so long. I mean, we've talked about AI and machine learning and automation destroying this industry for the past 10 years. it will happen at some point where it will shift because of the technology, what it can and cannot do. When exactly that will happen, when we can get our data all aggregated into one, data architecture and a lot of different pieces, when the cost component comes down, when the regulatory component. But those things aside, I think what we have now is the eyes wide open approach, right? Is understanding what will what was this technology and how can it potentially impact us? And I think the fact that unlike some of our third-party vendor industry friends where they're playing on margins, we're part of the company. And so, for example, for myself, I have a direct conversation with the CIO. And as we look at test cases and as we look at new technology, we kind of model out what are the different scenarios and how can that potentially have a people impact or an impact on the way we do business. And that way, we are prepared to see who can we upskill, what can we do, how can this change, and allowing the technology to be a partner rather than a disruptor or an eliminator of jobs. There definitely will be that impact, right? But I don't think anybody can, there are multiple models that I've seen, but as the technology shifts and changes, those models change back and forth. But I think it's the readiness of the employee base, the co-intelligence, understanding, the training that they take on that allow them to be part of the conversation rather than having the change impact them is what I'm seeing the common conversation amongst most of our companies, if not all of our companies, as we look to the future.
Got it. And Nikki, if I may ask you, and this relates to more than a couple of questions in the chat as well. By the way, loving that part. So I'll request our audience to keep tapping into that facility and keep raising questions while you have this great panel online. But Nikki, there are also questions with regards to, and I'm combining a couple of questions, but one, competition. So how do you really, everybody knows, and Anish mentioned the point around scale. I think that was very important. A lot of different locations, great locations, I have the fortune of traveling to a lot of these brilliant global services locations in my job, love that part. But there is a limitation of scale, which is a very real limitation because when companies are looking to create global hubs or large regional hubs, you have to go beyond a certain scale. We are not saying this is just a scale play anymore. There is a lot of optimization, efficiency, but still volumes matter. However, as you look at Philippines, what are the 2 or 3 points that are differentiating it to India? But also, as the sentiment around near-shoring is rising, and Americans are thinking more about Latin America, Europeans are thinking more about Eastern Europe, what I can confirm from our research and data is that we are not seeing any reverse movement, away from uh, traditionally offshore locations, though those terms don't do justice to the capability in these locations. But anyhow, though those are accepted terms till now. But Nikki, how do you see Philippines competing against a market like India, against nearshore markets, and what are the standout drivers that make Philippines the location of choice?
And I saw Paula smiling because definitely, I think a lot of um, what works to our advantage, Rohit, to date is while, of course, competing at scale, always if you compare it to competition, it's not something that we can do overnight. But what we're seeing and personally experience is the fact that the affinity to the Western culture, a lot of, especially with the customers that we serve, whether we admit it or not, is working to the advantage of the Philippines. Just building relationships, to your point, because it's not just always delivering to your service level agreements. Building relationships and the customer centric approach always works to our advantage, and we've seen it. Key customers are willing even to pay a premium just to be able to do work out of the Philippines. The fact that we're able to work US hours, that flexibility is another factor. And I've seen it in whether there's competition from Eastern Europe or India alone. The fact that majority of the agents or the people, the resources that support this industry are willing to work US hours. That's a huge, of course, factor for them to really move or shift the work to the Philippines. The other part that we're seeing, on top of cultural affinity, that flexibility, more and more as we get into these high touch services. You don't see it just not just in banking and finance, but especially in healthcare, where while there's the impact of technology, Rohit, is it will require still certain level of specialization that's available in the Philippines. Specific one example would be, of course, healthcare. Those three things, I believe, is working to our advantage, and that's how we can continue to compete with Eastern Europe and India. Right?
Yeah. No, all
And maybe
brilliant points. Yeah, Anish, just one small point, and then I come to you. So, Nikki, all brilliant points from my direct experience. Being in the Philippines, helping so many global companies go there. Uh, the two additional context I'll add is it is not just about the US working hours, but how you're able to get senior talent, how you're able to get niche talent,
Absolutely.
highly skilled talent to do that because proximity, time overlap matters. And second, what you said about all the new capabilities that are being built, I think there is also a lot of intentionality in the academia and industry
Absolutely.
partnerships, training directly on campus and hiring directly from campus. So those areas have been, particularly powerful in enabling some of the capabilities that we have seen. Anish, apologies to interrupt, but please go on.
So the last 10 minutes, what I heard from Paolo, Nikki, and Carlene, right? I just wanted to reflect that. See, if you see workways of the future, one thing which is a big implication for any GIC or GCC globally is how the work packages are changing, right? If your enterprise is thinking differently, if they are thinking about customer centricity, if they are trying to bring certain technology changes, how can GIC play a role in that mandate is what is the major implication. Now, what does that mean? That means that the landscape will continuously keep on changing. I mean, earlier it was mainframes, then it was intellect-led world, then cloud computing, platform economy, and now Gen AI, right? I mean, the world keeps shifting, disruptions will keep on coming. What is important for a GIC is how are they well plugged into the enterprise mandate and act as a talent hub which prepares them for the future, right? Now, again, what does that mean if we double click on that? That means that, and we touched upon that, I guess Paolo and Nikki made certain pointers around that. How do we prepare our talent for these changes is important. Now, again, that can mean in terms of soft skills, that can mean in terms of digital skills, that can, and a layer of domain comes into picture, right? So the right balance between all of these three is particularly important. Again, some of the role changes which are happening right now, a coder is not just a software developer, they can be AI assisted coders, right? A customer support now can turn into a AI augmented experience agents. A data analyst becomes an insight orchestrator. He's not just giving you data, but he's trying to derive insights using AI, right? So some of these content creators are becoming human AI content creators now, right? So there's an element of AI, and then the element of customer centricity still remains, where Philippines certainly has an edge over other geographies, right? Some of these changes are needed to be kept in mind by the GIC leaders in any geography, and accordingly they need to prepare their GIC and talent for the future. So I just wanted to make that point, connect the question which you
Absolutely.
had on workplace of the future and what does that imply for GICs globally.
and maybe if
Yeah.
I can respond and add to that. A lot of that, those are tools and technology to do certain activities. I think where we need to evolve is to be part of the conversation, to understand the business enough or to be close enough to the business where you're impacting the strategy of where we're moving towards, and then the downstream understanding of the technologies to help drive that. Because I think the GICs are in a unique space where you see how the operations are done, what needs to be done in the operations, and bridging that gap between the commercial strategy. And you see more and more of these companies where it's whether you call it GCC, GBS, GIC, they're becoming more of just another location from where work is done by the company. And that integration with the business is becoming stronger. And by being able to impact the strategy, I think that is much more of a multiplier effect that complements the technologies being deployed at the operational level.
Sorry, if I may just add quite a bit on that, because I think it's very important, the business acumen part of it. Because if we're trying to involve the people into the solution rather than just being implementing the solution, they would be able to add more value to it. And I think bridging it also to what you asked a while ago, Rohit, it's also about the resilience of the Filipino that we're able to make the Philippines like a location of choice for most of our business partners, and being able to really be part and upskill themselves to be part of the solution overall.
No, that's a great point, Carol. And before we pivot into the next part, which is the last segment, you just wanted to focus on that talent part. We're talking a lot about the industry. The industry is ultimately built on the talent that Philippines offers, and GICs are all in a way contributing to strengthening and deepening and expanding that pool of talent, but also competing. Some healthy competition in the industry to get the best of the talent. In that context, at Everest Group, we analyze completely from an outside-in perspective the perception of the GBS GIC brand as an employer every year. And our 2025 results for Philippines were published, recently. So there'll be details in this chat. An offer to all the attendees who are listening in today is that they can reach out and check what is the outside in GBS GIC brand perception for their organization. And again, Carol, you mentioned this point, and again, always phenomenal how Henkel has continued to be one of the top employers in the industry. Among others, again, you all have represented organizations that are really strong employers, recognized leading employers. But particularly, Carol, with Henkel, it's been phenomenal over the last so many years how that position has been maintained, which is a learning for a different time. I'm also looking at some other questions coming from audience. So wanted to confirm, yes, the recording of this session is basically it's going to live live on LinkedIn, so people can come in and access that anytime. Uh, Pivoting, the conversation has flown well, and didn't realize we were already, past 40-minute mark. So mindful of the time, but pivoting into, future opportunity and guidance for companies who are in the Philippines, who are looking towards the Philippines from their GIC perspective. So again, Carol, let me start with you this time. You spoke about how working with a German company, there are many positives, but also some caution, some cultural readjustment. If I were to build on that point, but look at it more broadly, if any company, particularly maybe European company, is looking to set up or consider Philippines today, what are the two or three, enablers or most critical success factors that they need to win?
I think the way I see it over the years, number one for me is, involving the people, trying to make them part of the solution rather than as external. Because what I've seen in the past, like probably 10 years ago, is that we're treated, I mean, even if it's a shared service center, they're treated like just like a different company. But once we are integrated into the solution, we add more value into it, because Filipinos are very hardworking in nature, and they would be able to really contribute for as long as they see passion. Particularly now, we're talking about the entrance of generation Gen Zs and soon Gen Alpha. It really have to change the way we work with Filipinos or with people in general. Second is about continuous investing into upskilling in terms of making sure that we transform people. So we started usually lift and shift of jobs or transactions, but once we give them the opportunity to really say something about okay, this can be automated, okay, this can be part of this can be integrated into this kind of tool, hear them out. It's really crucial that we involve the operations into building into the having a successful relationship. And I think the third part is stakeholder management. And I think all the Filipinos in general are good at that. It's good also to be clear and transparent about how we work and how we can work things better and what would be the plan. So I think that those are my top threes.
Yeah, no, all of them brilliant and sometimes less appreciated. So thanks for calling them out, Carol. Paolo, what would you add to that?
Sure. I think that I was talking to my old boss, Jack Jones, who helped build the JP Morgan GSC space. And he said that if we could, what's the secret sauce? If we could fly all of the executives over at one time to get them involved and understand, it would be so much easier than having to do, piecemeal, slowly building over a long period of time, right? I think the awareness, the exposure, and the understanding, because I don't know how many times I've had first-time visitors who come over here, who see our operations, who see even like being in BGC or being in some of the CBDs and seeing, now I get it, now I understand. I didn't realize it was like this, right? That art of the possible expands their mind and then they become more of the evangelists back at home office. I think secondly, though, we need to also prepare our talent. Filipinos over the years, we're very good operators, right? We're very good subject matter experts into a function. We're not yet very good at the general manager role, at the understanding the business, understanding the P&L, not just from the budget that you have for your function, but your contribution, for example, to the company operating margin. I think there needs to be an opportunity, and companies need to have the the ability to hire local leaders to start new organizations. So if a company is coming in here, my first piece of advice is, even though you have the culture carriers that come in, you need to have a senior leader from the very beginning who understands the local landscape, the local market, and can make the right decisions right away. I don't know how many companies with all good intent have come in and set up shop and only see a piece of the picture and not the whole picture. And once they are able to interact or bring in a senior leader who is understanding the local market and what is possible, not just in the IT BPM industry, but for example, the whole Philippine economy and the talent that's available there for conglomerates that support Philippine business. There's a huge opportunity to revamp how these centers are structured. And the companies that have the benefit of coming in late and seeing the best practices are the ones that I see in the GCC space, kind of jumping ahead and really getting into the innovation, getting into horizontal structures, into global operating models much quicker. And I think that's really where, as new companies come in, that would be kind of the guidance I would suggest.
I absolutely agree. Even my first trip after working a few years with clients on the market, it's a completely different experience. And we have seen this not just about Philippines, but about many of these locations where clients may not have directly worked with or been to, visiting, seeing it for themselves, the proof of the pudding, and that has worked brilliantly. I also agree is that they not just need to see but see the whole picture. So thanks for that, Paulo. Nikki, let me come to you next, but also add another element to it. Uh, what does it take to succeed in the Philippines? But also, as companies think about future capabilities, we have spoken about data science. We have spoken about deeper industry specific expertise like in healthcare. We have got spoken about moving up the value chain, more complex, more problem solving roles. But to kind of consolidate that point of view, one, what does it take to succeed in Philippines? How can companies do that better? And second, what should they be thinking about when they think about the roles, the functions, the operating model, the next wave of opportunity? So what's your view on that?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Roy. I think excellent question. I think I'll wear my IB top hat and connect that to the story of Carolyn Global Solutions. We're a 6-year entity in the Philippines, and we grew from 500 to 10,000. So I think that's enough proof there that
Phenomenal.
one, it can be done. But what are those enablers? When we thought of setting up shop in the Philippines, it was all about, and if you look at, and I encourage everyone to look at the 2028 roadmap, it's available in the IBPAP website. There are 3 key areas there: talent, infrastructure, regulatory alignment. And the reason I mentioned that, and I'll tie it up with, there's complex functions that we need to be prepared for. So talent, why is it critical? Caroline was very intentional about investing in very specialized training for not just for the basic contact center work, but for more importantly for the emerging roles. And I say regulatory alignment because it took a lot of partnership, not just with local government units in cities and in provincial sites that we wanted to set up shop at. So emerging roles, very early stages. Then there was AI, digital operations. We wanted to get into that, and we knew that the set of leaders that we needed to onboard not only had that skill, but were open to learning more. Regulatory alignment, of course, very, very critical as you grow, whether in Metro Manila or in provincial sites. Key there would be navigating local policies as well, just ensuring compliance, operational efficiency. Very important. So we have 4 sites in the Philippines, 2 in Manila, 2 in Iloilo, and we've been very successful in those areas. Infrastructure, made mention of that. It's a whole integration of technology, but also equally important is access to, how do you equip and enable your talent to be successful? Now, just wrapping all of that up, Rohit, I mentioned those 3. If we're advising a global company, and if there's anyone right now that's watching with looking at setting up shop in the Philippines, I think those 3 are going to be critical. But if there was one opinion, and I couldn't agree more with Paulo, was the fact that the hiring of your leader out of the Philippines will be important, but it's also equally critical to ensure that your leader out of or regardless of region has a seat on the table, has access to making sure that recommendations are put forward. That's one of the things that we were successful at. If you look at our website, we're on all Filipino leadership team. We have access to our COO because we're at the front line. We know what's happening on the ground. So it's very important. And I know it's cliche to be saying it, but empowering your leaders locally and making sure that they have a seat on the table, very critical.
Brilliant, and then Nikki, I can confirm that from my direct experience over a decade, working with Philippines market, is how I have seen that shift of working with a predominantly expat-led, centers to a very healthy mix where a lot of Filipino leaders have on merit, kind of as the industry has matured, earned the credibility and then are leading, with passion, with ambition, with skill. Also, I want to compliment you on Kelon's achievement in the last 6 years. My boss, our CEO, Jimmy Taroda, coined the term kind of or uses the term perma crisis, often, and he says the world is in a state of permanent crisis. And last 6 years, every year, every 18 months, there has been a major event which the world would be busy with if it happened over a decade or 2 decades. So during a lot of this phase of change and transformation, kind of building a large organization that not only complements the leadership, the local leadership team, but also the depth and the breadth and the resilience of the Philippines market that allows that to happen. So that's been absolutely brilliant. As we look forward from here, and Anish, let me start with you. Uh, as you work with clients who are again looking at this uh, global landscape and are thinking what is the best bet for them, where should they be, what is your one reason why you would suggest them to go to Philippines or have Philippines in the locations mix?
So Rohit, again, with the recent conflict, right, the India-Pakistan conflict, which happened recently, a lot of our clients were heavily concentrated in India, right? As a GIC, they have thousands of people in India. Now, another, and they started asking us questions, saying, in case something escalates to a very higher level, what do we do, right? Because given that we have so many people, while there is some resiliency and BCP measures in place, but then do we rethink our location strategy? So one of the important angles to take for leaders when they think of their locations of choice is, do they have enough resiliency in their network, which means that even if, let's say, there are companies who are heavily concentrated on one particular location, now that can be anything in APAC, like for example, India, or if they are a very heavy US base or a very heavy European base, as you look out for another location, which is that one location in your portfolio which can offer you a balanced set of features. Now that means talent, cost, multilingual cultural integration features, and so on and so forth, while keeping that resiliency aspect in mind, because you might need to scale up in a month's time, in a 2 months' time, or a specific time period in case you want to build a resiliency in a matter of conflict. So I know these are rare in today's world, but certainly post two of the recent conflicts, Russia-Ukraine conflict, leading to a heavy shift in the European region, and then India-Pakistan recent conflict show off. Again, I won't say it happened to a level where, and it's good that it did not happen. But then again, because of the resiliency factor, I believe Philippines can certainly play a plus one or a hub role within the location studies network for a lot of companies.
Yeah, and then and I'll just chime in on this one is because I saw a lot of questions around geopolitical business continuity risk, and we covered them not so explicitly, but what my experience has been is that there have been movements, and then even if we don't go that long, just in the last 10 years, where whether we look at the Russia-Ukraine situation impact on Eastern Europe, the Middle East conflicts, the macroeconomic situation sometimes, or other reasons in Latin America, some of the politics between US and Philippines in the last decade, some of the latest situations in India. The answer is that no single location has been, spared from some of these escalations, thankfully. And then this is another testament to the market, to this industry. The GIC GBS model has stood the test of times. However, yes, how do companies think about balancing the portfolio? As Anishu said, the flexibility, the agility to adapt, to scale, to accommodate is very important. I'm mindful that we need to wrap up soon. So if there are questions we have not been able to get to in the chat, we will look at them after the session. But thank you so much to our audience for participating. Let me come back to our panelists, one last time. And again, over the last a few decades, there is a lot of, experience packaged in this panel of building and scaling organizations in Philippines, GIC capabilities through troublesome times actually. But again, opportunist, a lot of opportunity at the same time that you have capitalized on. If you reflect back on your careers in GICs in Philippines, what is one most valuable lesson that you have learned that you would like to share with your peers or people looking at this industry? So again, not to put anybody on the spot. Again, we can start with anyone who wants to share, and then we come to others.
Yeah, I can start if that's okay. So I think over the
Absolutely.
what for me, if I'm looking back, what really had the biggest challenge that I've experienced before is when we start building up, we eventually have to move it out, meaning we have to outsource the activity, and we have to think about what's going to happen with the 100 plus people who are affected of the outsourcing. But instead of course we're scared at that time, but when we look at it, it's an opportunity for us to let the people upskill themselves and try new things, try exploring opportunities outside their comfort zone. It's mostly at that time finance. So these finance people try to move to another roles and responsibilities. And I would say some of them, or most of them, are still with us and they are successful. So I think it's all about being able to anticipate what's going to be happening in the future and making sure that they prepare for it through upskilling and of course critical and strategic planning.
Great. Paulo, Nikki?
Okay, I think no. Okay, Paolo, do you want to? Okay, I'll go next, Rohit. No, and that really made me reflect. I think if there's, and I'll start with a comment that about the Philippines that I've heard multiple times, and I know Carol and Paolo can relate to it. That while we're great at customer service, we are perceived as border takers, and that irks. That it truly does. That we're mere order takers, that we need to be coming to the table more for with recommendations. And if there's one thing I've learned just the past 10 years is creating an environment where ideas can thrive. Because if I look at Carolina, for example, we have 10,000 people who are at the front lines who interact with members, providers on a daily basis. What we encourage and what we always say is there are no bad ideas, especially now with innovation and technology. We from building Brainwave or our idea generation tool to getting everyone participate with white belt self-paced training as an example. Every idea that comes in front of us, we review and always tell people that there are no bad ideas and we need to continue to create that environment where great ideas can thrive.
Brilliant. Thanks,
Yeah.
Nikki. Paulo?
Yeah, and maybe that just to right along what Nikki said, I think it's the mindset shift, right? And I think that as we've grown, as we've developed, because of a large portion of our base has been a third party provider type organization where we were, dealing with the clients and making sure the clients are happy. I think that mindset shift, especially in the GCCs, where you're just as much an employee as the CEO of your organization, right? And so you should, I think, encouraging the thought of you are just as good as anybody else on the table, but it's up to you to show your capability, right? And should people doubt it or should people not understand your full the full spectrum of what you can do, it's up to you to stand up and show, right? And I think that's something that it's a passion of mine. That the more we are able to do that, the more we're able to make that mindset shift. And I see it with a lot of people who have been working with in a while who don't take that passive, yes, you're okay, and smile nature that makes us great Filipinos from a tourism perspective. But as a business leader, our ideas, our thoughts have just enough weight and just enough merit as anybody else on the table. Once you start making that shift, of course, it's still the respectful and Filipino way that has made us so famous, but using that superpower to exponentially showcase our capability is where I think the future is.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Paulo. Well put. So, just to summarize, we are talking about preparing for the future, making ideas thrive, and the entrepreneurial leadership partnership mindset. Right. I'm really thankful to all three of you and Anish for your support in making this happen. Hopefully, we have helped more people become aware and inspired to look at Philippines than 1 hour earlier. A great early morning session for me as well. Always lovely to see you all and talk to you. Very thankful for all our attendees. I could see a lot of comments coming in, not only questions, but also sharing from their experience, their point of view. So thanks for that. I'll only conclude by saying that what you just said, Paulo. So not giving away the strengths, but building on them. So Philippines has had great success in the last 2 decades, 3 decades in making a very strong role and foundation, and it's pivotal to the global services industry. However, the opportunity lies ahead. It's much larger. It's much more fun. It's much more engaging, and companies are actively looking at that. I'll just wrap it up with the comment that Philippines is open for business and then very keen to partner with global companies. So do reach out to our panel today or Anish and me if you have questions. Once again, thanks a lot for your time. Thanks for listening in. Hopefully, this has added value.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.